So the first question is, why an e-bike? So short answer is I wanted something that was a little bit different, for a little bit different. I already ride, done mountain, done road. I got a collapsible and I kind of like that. I was looking for getting rid of my mountain bike and a collapsible. This particular bike is both. And I also wanted to figure out a way to get there in a hurry. So instead of having to drive my car, I was able to just hop on my e-bike and ride over there. The other thing is, whether you have friends that don't ride, or you're trying to get people to ride for the first time, or you're keeping groups together, one of the hardest things to do, whether you're a route leader or not, is to get people to come together with their different abilities. Even in my club where I have A, B, C, D, sometimes E, you still have groups of people that kind of group together, and that's great. And they kind of get faster together, and that's kind of the idea, is bringing people together. But it's still hard to sometimes get those gaps to kind of come together. So an e-bike, you just kind of control how much effort you're putting forth. If you're not feeling good, all those kind of things. Also, there's some particular ones with this particular one with folding, and some of those other things are also cool too. So the other, of course, thing is with the statistics on e-bikes, I just want to put a stat up there that shows, where my heart rate was on a normal ride and where my heart rate was on an e-bike ride. And the only difference was on my ride to the ride and my ride back home, my moderate is a little bit longer. That's really it. That's the only thing that changed the average. I worked just as hard on my e-bike as I did on my road bike. Now, this is dependent on how much effort you put forth, of course. There's, when I did the Hollywood sign, for example, that climbs like a 300 watt climb or whatever, and I had it on like a 300 watt setting, so I was just kind of cruising up there. I'll show that too. So it is dependent on how much you want to put forth, of course. So the option is there to not pedal as hard. So as we're with a normal bike, you don't have that option. So obviously you're going to work less with an e-bike. So let's get into the next thing. Why this particular e-bike? So there's a lot of cool things about the Rattan Fatbear Plus. One, it's dual suspension. It hits all the right specs. It's 500 watts. It's 11 amp hour battery. Those are kind of the minimums, the starting points, I would say, to start at. It also is a rear hub, so it's cheaper if you can afford to get a mid motor. There's some stuff there, but with this bike in particular, is the first time in a long time that I can say, hey, here's some marketing that actually came through, and that's with the iPass technology. It really does regenerate a lot. You switch it down to 0, where you're not using any of the e-bike motor every time you go downhill, and it regenerates a ton of electricity. I was able to do mixed road up to the Hollywood sign after doing a 35 mile ride before we even got to Hollywood, which was a pretty steep climb. And then I did an additional 10 miles after that. So I was floating around 55 miles and I still had some battery left. So that's really, really impressive. And that's what kind of sold me on this bike. I can collapse it down smaller than my road bike. The tires are huge, and because it's an e-bike, you get all the comfort without having to work as hard because the motor's helping you. Now, I don't do it all the time. I wouldn't recommend it, but if you need to do a quick text, you're also in a better position to do that too, where the handlebars are, and I can kind of just cruise and show that in video too, where I kind of just have my forearms on the handlebar. Again, not necessarily recommending it. I'm just saying it's comfortable for me. It works out really, really well. And it's a fun way for me to ride and kind of just cruise. And then of course, the speed, I was able to, going uphill where you kind of lose your footing when you're off road. There's times where I'd have to circle back, go down, and then come back up. I was able to hit the throttle just a little bit, but also on just road, when I was riding with my club, I was able to, maintain 30 miles an hour. I try to only do that when I'm rushing home. I just really try to stay towards the back and help out anybody that's needed, I haven't had anybody that's had anything break down, but I have more stuff on me because the tools and stuff, I'm not as worried about weight. So I have spoke wrenches and zip ties and all the different kinds of stuff to help fix people's bikes. Also durability, I accidentally hit a 2x4. I was off to the side making sure I was away from everybody, and I wasn't paying attention for a second, and boom, I hit a 2x4. But it didn't phase the bike at all. Now, my road bike, it would have flattened me out for sure, but because of the tires being so big and so giving, you know, it did pop up the 2x4, so be aware of that. But all well and good, nothing wrong with the bike, nobody got hurt, so I'm very thankful for that. And also, just utility of this bike in particular for security. I have a password protection on there. You can fold the stock down if you go into like Starbucks or something like that, and with the key, which can be unclicked, and you only have 2 keys, so make sure you keep one at home or with someone that can come bring it to you, and you can have your key on you. That cannot be duplicated. It can't be, I mean, I guess you could copy it, but no one's going to be able to get just a copy of a key without copying your actual key. And then there's a password protection that locks it out software-wise too. So that's kind of a cool thing to do if you go to the store. It's actually easier to secure than a typical bike would be, which is kind of a unforeseen benefit. So the one catch, of course, is you have this little kickstand kind of thing, which is really, really helpful because it is, I'm not gonna lie, it's kind of heavy. You know, with the battery in, it's like 60 pounds. You want that little pivot point to be able to pick it up and, you know, kind of pivot on it. But if you're doing like really severe, heavy, hardcore off-roading, then you do need to be aware of that if you're going over those rocks and stuff. I did a ton of mountain biking, and anything short of really technical, like rock crawling kind of stuff, you're good. You don't have to worry about it. So that's kind of the 4-in-1 on that. Stay tuned for the next section. So in wrapping it up, what you're getting is just a really great bike that can go further for less. A lot of great details. I'm not sponsored by the company, but all my interactions with the company have been really good. And so it's nice to be able to reach out to them and say, well, how much is this? How much is that? And looking at the website for a spare battery, which is like a half of the cost of like a Bosch would be, or, you know, all these different things really add to the value of the package. And the fact that it's starting out, you know, around $1,500 for what it is, where it can compete with much more expensive bikes. The only caveat being, you know, that little thing that's like the kickstand thing if you're wanting to do hardcore rock crawling over mountain biking. That's my son in the background. But or if it's also really, really steep hills, like I said, it does help, but it's not going to be able to rip up a hill like a mid-motor does. And then of course, being able to fold it for security, the utility of having, you know, I didn't really go over that, but like a fender rack kind of setup in the back where you can do, you know, an inline rack and also still be able to fold it in the back of your car and be able to use it like a car, being able to do club rides and mountain. You can do all that with just one bike, which is pretty cool. So right now, I know they're doing an Indiegogo, and I'll link that too at the time of this recording, where they're actually doing a 750 watt one for around the same price. It's like 50% off, and it does 14-hour amp hour or a 17 amp hour battery, which is crazy, doing over like 100 miles on that. So be safe, be okay. You don't have to run out and get an e-bike, but don't be crazy with people who do. See you later.